top 5 budget and free-to-play decks of the format. It was really tough to find 5 decks that really are competitive while still being cost-effective right now, although the last 2 ones on this list are really good while also still being really affordable as well. Starting off, we have Time Lords though, and this deck is definitely on the budget side, being that you only need to go through one box one time to get a couple cards, and everything else is either a character reward or it's something you can get with a ticket. And this deck can definitely steal some wins against top decks and against top players. Not every deck has great outs to the Time Lords. They can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects, plus you have the trap cards, which can also offer some protection and be an annoyance for your opponent. And not everyone is running Cosmic Cyclone to be able to take these things out, so you can definitely steal some wins against certain decks that usually you wouldn't be able to get wins against, just because this deck just can be very problematic for certain decks to deal with because of their effects and the way that it's set up. So, and again, it's very budget friendly. You don't need a ton of things out of your extra deck. That is one of the big costs with Duel Links nowadays, that so many decks require so many extra deck monsters that come out of a whole bunch of different boxes. So even if like your main deck comes out of one box, if your extra deck is requiring you to go into 3, 4, 5 other boxes to try to get one XYZ or Link monster out of each of those, you know, the price of your deck can go up very quickly. So it is nice that this deck doesn't have a huge reliance on your level 10s, although you do use them occasionally, so you definitely do need to get some level 10s for this deck. But we do have very budget options like the Sky Palace that you can use as well. But Time Lords are definitely something that you can consider if you're like a brand new player and are needing some kind of deck to get started. I would recommend going with some other kind of deck than Time Lord, but it's an option there if you need it. Next up, we have Ursaric. This is actually a deck that got top 4 in a tournament, and it's a really budget option as well. You do need to go through a main box, I think 2 or 3 times to really put it together. This particular deck was running the Spellbook engine as well, but you could try to find other alternatives for that if you don't have it. But everything comes out of one box for this deck. All of the Ursarics come out of one box. There's only a couple of super rares, 1 ultra, and everything else are just rares or commons out of there, so it's pretty affordable to put together. You do have a couple of other extra deck options you can run as well, like the Princess and then Girsu, but overall this deck is not as expensive as some of the other ones on the list. You can see the gem cost in the top left corner, and it's definitely on the more affordable side compared to some of the other decks that are literally 3-4 times the cost of this deck to put together. And again, you can go with some cheaper alternatives for some things like the Spellbook engine if you don't have it, and find other ways to play it, especially if you're not like trying to hit like the top 100 of the KC Cup. I mean, it's going to be really difficult to hit the top 100 of the KC Cup, especially with any of these first 3 decks. You might be able to with the last couple on this list, but yeah, Ursartic are still a nice option to go with. They're a pretty fun deck to play with as well. It's the Polar Bear deck after all. You do have a lot of big monsters you can dump out of your hand very easily, and a very unique, different synchro summoning mechanic that other decks just don't have access to, that no other deck in the game has access to, so that's definitely another option if you're looking for a budget deck to play. Alright, next up is Lunalights. Now, they're on just about every one of these kind of budget or free-to-play deck lists, and for good reason. Most of the deck just comes out of one box, which is, you only need to go through it one time at this point now, with the Yellow Martin really being limited to 1. You do need to get 3 copies of Tenyi for this deck to run it at its full potential, but it's just 1 super rare out of a box, so you can just target that 1 card if you really want to go for this deck. Beyond that, this deck did get some new support fairly recently, with the launch of the Selena character coming out with new skills for the deck, as well as new extra deck monsters, including the Lunalight Leo Dancer, which is great for OTKs if you're playing this in the KC Cup. Again, any deck that can finish off your opponent really easily and OTK them really fast is a good thing. Leo Dancer definitely helps do this, being able to attack twice per turn with 3,500 attack points, blow up all your opponent's monsters, and swing through again to finish them off and win the game. Plus, your opponent cannot target it, cannot destroy it with card effects. Very difficult for certain decks to deal with. Just like the Time Lord deck, you're going to win some games just because you're going to slap down this Leo Dancer, or even sometimes a Saber Dancer, and your opponent just doesn't have an out to it and just can't kill it, and you just win the game just because of that. You also have the OTK threat of Cat Dancer, always present and always relevant. So again, this deck can definitely OTK people really quickly, and it's something to be on the lookout for if you're going to be playing at the lower level, especially the KC Cup. Again, it's a very budget-friendly deck, so a lot of players tend to flock to this deck, and I'm sure that you will see some people trying to play it in the KC Cup just because of that. And then finally, we get to the top 2 decks here that are really good, as well as being really budget friendly. First off, we have Tenyi, the newest deck that just came out of the most recent box, World of Barian, a very powerful deck that is definitely taken over the metagame and becoming one of the top 3 picks. I wouldn't say it's taken over the metagame, but it's definitely made itself a presence there as being one of the top decks, and you can put together a pretty budget friendly version of it as well. Again, everything comes out of one box. You see the cost up at the top. You see the $75 $5 cost there. That's because of the Ice Dragon's Prison that's in the deck. But if you have other more budget-friendly back row cards, you can definitely use that as well. But when everything is just coming out of one box and you have an entire deck that you can put together out of it, and the only other thing you really need is the special set card, Draco Berserker, the Tenyi, which you can get out of one of those special sets, it definitely makes this deck much more affordable and easy to play. And again, this is a really powerful deck. This particular deck got second place in a tournament, so you can definitely do very well with Tenyis, running a very budget, cost-effective version of it. And if you're looking to really compete in the KC Cup and you're looking for a cheap budget deck as a newer player or someone who doesn't have access to a ton of gems, this may be the way to go. And last but not least, if you're also looking for another budget option that's also really powerful and doesn't require an extra deck, how about Toons? Toons have had some success in tournaments. This particular deck got King of Games, but there have been some decks or Toon decks that have been doing well in tournaments and actually getting top 8 and placing well in those as well. So Toons are another option you might be able to go with and do pretty well within the KC Cup. That's also very budget friendly. You have to go through the new box that just came out 3 times, so you're also going to get Tenyis if you do decide to go for that. That's really nice being able to sort of like double down and get both of those decks at the same time. But in addition to that, though, a lot of the cards of this deck are free to play. The Dark Magician comes from the card trader. You can get Dark Magician Girl as well as a lot of the other cards in this deck by either tickets or by leveling up Pegasus to unlock them. So, and again, you don't need an extra deck for this deck. That's a huge benefit whenever you're talking about budget or free to play options for decks. So Toons may be the way to go as well if you're looking for a fan favorite deck to play that can also get you some wins and do pretty well in the KC Cup. Might be the way to go. But if you guys did like the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to be doing spicy decks at the end of the week on Sunday, as well as a Destiny Hero deck breakdown here in the next couple of days to close out the rest of the KC Cup weekend here in the main event for it. So thank you guys so much for watching and have a great rest of the day.